Hello Infiniteers, and welcome back to the Axiom. Today we are going to start hooking up the logic for this toy box beginning in the hangar bay, and there are three things that we need to do here. First, we need to build an elevator over here that will take us up to the Axiom corridors. Second, we need to implement a sky change so that we can see some stars out there, because the sky just is not appropriate for when we're in the hangar. But we want that sky to be visible once we get up top. And the third thing we need is to generate Wall-E and Eve and put them in the hangar here so that they're waiting for us when we get in here. And all three of these things are very simple and easy to do. And in fact, all of the logic that we will need for the Axiom will be much easier than the logic that we had to do for the first toy box. Even the main quest here, which we're going to hook up next time, won't be nearly as complicated as the search for Wall-E or scanning for plant life, so I'm sure you'll be happy about that. And before we begin, I want to let you know that I have not provided any logic diagrams for this episode because you don't need them. The logic here should be very easy to follow. Alright, so let's start by reviewing some of the creativitoys that we're going to need. And I have placed down a level starter and a button, a time delayer, two friendly wave generators, a radar marker, and another button. And the buttons are just temporary for us while we're hooking everything up. And I have also placed down a large floor surface that we are going to use for our elevator. And let's go ahead and style that while we're right here. We want to use one of the Star Wars styles. It's the Geonosis Droid Factory Floor Grate. And we'll apply that. And that will be the floor for the elevator. And we'll put that in place here shortly. Okay, so the first thing we're going to need is a path creator. And we find that up under the creativitoys. And we want to put the elevator right in the dead center of this elevator shaft. So lined up with the center of that wall and the center of that wall. And then drop it down all the way down here to floor level. Okay, and hopefully that puts us in point mode, and it does. Our second point will be right up here at the level of the floor for the interior corridors. And I'll drop that point and exit. Okay, for the path properties, everything here stays the same. We just want to turn off auto start objects when connected. And then we're going to come up here to our large floor surface. Again, this is out of the blocks, basic blocks drawer. And we're going to open the logic menu for this, do a new path connection. Connect that to our path. There we go. Toy box path. And there is the floor for our elevator. Now, to make this go up and down, what I want to do is I want the player, when they walk onto the elevator, to have it start moving automatically and bring them up here and stop. And the player will walk off, and at some point, if they decide to return, they'll come in here, and as soon as they step on the floor, it will start going down. Okay? So that's the behavior that I want for the elevator. I want it to be automatic. I don't want to have to push a button to use it. And to do that, what we're going to do is put down a trigger area in here. And so let's go back up to the creativitoys. We'll go over and select the trigger area. And we want to drop this down on the floor of the shaft down here, in the corner of that elevator shaft, just like that. Okay, And then I want to pick up this little thing here. I don't know what to call it. And we're going to bring this all the way up to the top of the elevator shaft and all the way over. We want this to fill the shaft, okay? So that whole trigger area fills the shaft. And so it's not going to matter whether they enter it from up here or down here. It's going to do the exact same thing. Okay, before we hook that up, though, let's set some properties on our block here, the large floor block. So under properties, we're going to go under toy box path. And most of the things here are going to stay the same. That's the same. We're not going to set any of these except for movement style. We want this to go back and forth. All right. All right. Now, because we want the block to move and stop, we can't go to the path creator to do that because this just does a play or a stop, and it's just going to keep going. But if you remember my tutorials on the path creator, you can go to the block to do that. So I'm going to come over to the trigger area. We're going to do a new logic connection when entered by player any. So as soon as any player steps foot inside of this, what I want to do is I want to come up to the time delayer and start the delay. And the idea is I want to give the player a moment to get actually onto the floor before it starts moving. And I think 1 second is fine. So the default property here on the time delayer of 1 second should be enough. And if there's a second player in the toy box, that gives them an opportunity to step on the elevator as well. And then once the time delayer goes off, we'll start moving the elevator. And so on the time delayer, a new logic connection, when the delay is completed, we're going to come down not to the path, but to the floor block. And under toy box path, we're going to say start. Okay, that will start the block moving along the path. And when it gets to the top, we want it to stop. So we will select our path point here, open the menu and do a new logic connection when the point is reached by the object on the path. So when the floor gets to this point, we're going to come over to the floor and tell it to stop. Okay? So it'll get up there and it'll stop. And then the player will get off and start moving around the corridor. Now, if the player comes back and wants to go back down, as soon as they enter this trigger area, we've already set up the logic connection to have the floor start moving, and so the floor will start descending. And so when it gets down to the original path point down here, we want it again to stop. And so on this point on the path, we're going to do a new logic connection. When the point is reached by the object on the path, we'll tell the block to stop. Okay? And there we go. And we can go ahead and test this out. So as soon as we step on the elevator, we'll wait a second, it starts moving. And that little hiccup was just the camera. It gets to the top and stops. We step off, we come out and do our stuff. You know, I'd like to go back to the hangar bay. So we'll step on the elevator. It takes us down. And when we get to the bottom, we stop. So that is a very simple way to build a automatic elevator. And I think you can use that for all kinds of toy boxes. So hopefully that helps you out. Okay, now we got to do something about the sky. And because we need to change the sky, and because that sky is part of a power disk, it comes from a power disk on console, I'm going to put that power disk down on my base. That's the Tomorrowland sky. And of course nothing's going to happen because we're already set to that sky. And in order to change the sky dynamically, we're going to need a sky changer. And I forgot to put that down ahead of time, so let me go do that. You find that under the Instant Fun category. If you want to change the sky dynamically, you have to have this toy in your toy box. Alright, and I'm going to come into the properties, and the sky we're going to use is going to be under Disney Infinity. I'm going to use the Infinity and Beyond sky from the Toy Story in Space playset. I'll set that to be the sky. So when we enter the toy box, this is the sky we'll see. And that's perfect because when you're in here in the hangar bay and you're looking out that window, you want to see some stars. So that's good. But we want that to change when we get up here in the corridors. And so in the elevator shaft is where we want this change to occur. And to do that, we're going to need a couple of trigger areas. And they're going to have to overlap the one that we're using for the elevator shaft. And let me grab my screen grab here to make sure I put this in just the right spot. Okay. So the first one we're going to put is going to be, the top of this is going to be right at the level of the floor. Okay? So as soon as the elevator starts descending, if they're coming in from the top, we want something to happen here. And I want to bring this up and make this as short as I can make it. And again, we want this to fill the width of the elevator shaft, so just like that. And to make this a little easier to grab, you can actually drag it out here a little bit. That way you can just get into that if you wanted to. You can even drag it out past these blocks, because that won't matter. Okay. And then we're going to put down another trigger area right below that. So once again, let's come over here. And this one we can leave at the height that we've got it. Once again, we'll bring this out here to make it easier to select that thing. Okay, so we have two trigger areas now. You see where that one is placed. The top of it's right at the surface of the corridor floor out here. And it's one cube high. And then another trigger area right below that. Now, when you're going up the shaft, we want to change the sky. And it's important that we pick the right trigger area to do that. If we did it on the bottom one, then it'll start to change the sky, but then as soon as they hit this one, we change it back to stars. So on the top one, we want to change it to be the Tomorrowland sky, okay? And when you're coming from this direction and you're descending, you're going to pass through this top trigger area first, which will try to change it to the Tomorrowland sky, but it's already going to be the Tomorrowland sky, so nothing will happen until they get down into this trigger area. And then it'll start to change into the starry sky. And we want to do this as high as we can in this shaft, because the sky change is going to take a moment. And so we want it to be changed by the time we get down here into the hangar bay. We don't want to see a sky change happening. We want the sky to be out there. So hopefully that makes sense. Right, so on the top one, we're going to change it to the Tomorrowland sky. So a new logic connection when entered by player any. We come over to our sky changer. We go down to the bottom, 2 hexagonal power discs. We set it to the Tomorrowland sky. On the other trigger area below that, we're going to set it to the starry sky. So a new logic connection on that trigger area, when entered by player any, come over to our sky changer, go into Disney Infinity, go down to Infinity and Beyond. Select that sky. Okay, so now we're in the hangar bay. We end up on the Axiom. We got a nice starry sky out there. We're going to take the elevator shaft up. And the sky change happens. And notice it takes a moment for the sky change to happen. The player is actually not going to see that because when we're done, we're going to put a ceiling on top of these corridors. So the sky change will be happening as the player comes off the elevator, but they're not going to see that, okay? So that's not a problem. But when we go down the elevator, we want that sky change to happen before we hit the bottom. So let's see if that's what we get. Sky change is happening, and there it is. As soon as we can see the sky, it's already set to the stars. So the placement of those trigger areas is very important in order for the sky change to be finished. And the one that's critical is the bottom one. Okay, this is the one that changes the sky. And its sky change is going to happen the moment they descend into this trigger area. So about where my spark is there, the cursor. And so as the elevator's going down and descending, that sky change is happening so that once we get down to the bottom, it's in place. Okay? The fact that this one is up here at the top of the shaft, again, doesn't matter because we're going to cover this whole corridor with ceiling before we're done. Okay, and there we go. Now, the last thing we want to do in today's episode is put Wall-E and Eve in the toy box. And I've got 2 friendly wave generators out here. We're going to use this first one for Eve. And to save a little time, I've already configured the wave to put her in there because she's at the bottom of that long list. And this one we're going to use for Wall-E. And again, to save time, I've already put him in the list because I think he's halfway or 2/3 down that long list. Okay? And then we're going to want a radar marker on Eve because we want the player to pick her up and carry her with him. And so we have that as well. Okay, so on the first friendly wave generator here, we're going to do a new locator connection. And I've placed a couple of locators down here. We're going to connect Eve to that one. And you can see where this is placed. Notice the little blue dot on the locator is facing that direction. And the other locator's for Wall-E, and he's facing that direction. And notice how that's lined up with the wall. So we'll put Wall-E at the other locator. Okay. And then on the properties for both of these, we're going to set them up the same way. You're going to take the generation delay to 0. And under the generated friend options for the behavior, we're going to have them stand still. So Wall-E is going to stand still. And so is Eve. Generation delay to 0. And have her stand still. And we want to put a radar marker on Eve, so I put this radar marker next to this one. This will help us in the future to remember which of these is which, because the radar marker goes with Eve. So we're going to do a new actor connection. Connect that to the friendly wave generator. On the properties, the beacon type will be a yellow arrow. Beacon location will be the connected actor. And we want this on by default when we come into the toy box. Okay, and then we're going to come over to our level starter and do a new logic connection on catalyze. We'll put Eve in the toy box first, so we'll come over to that friendly wave generator and generate the wave. And we'll come over to our level starter, new logic connection on catalyze, go to the other friendly wave generator and generate that wave. And since we're already in the toy box, we might want to test this out. We'll use this button to kick off the level starter. And when you put Eve and Wall-E in the toy box, that's nice. They'll be in here. You can use them while you're testing your toy box and everything. When you go to save it, it's kind of a good idea not to have the townspeople in there. And so we're going to use this button to take them out before we save our toy box. So a new logic connection. When this button is pressed, we'll come over to each of the friendly wave generators and defeat the waves. I just like to have a clean toy box when I save. I think that's useful. Okay. So, there we go. And what we can do is we will invoke the level starter. And then we'll come down into the hangar bay and see what we got. And there's Wall-E and Eve. And she has a radar marker, so that's really good. And the two of them are just going to stand there and visit. And they couldn't really move if they wanted to, because the surface they're standing on is connected to a path. And they're not going to move because the AI doesn't realize that they're not actually standing on, or that they're actually standing on something. It thinks they're not, because it doesn't know about this ledge that's connected to the path. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit next time when we try to get Wall-E to follow us. All right, so at this point then we would go up and push the button to take them out of the toy box and then save our toy box. But I won't do that on the video. You can do that yourself. But that is it for the logic in the hangar bay. And I hope this video was helpful for you to see how you can build your own automatic elevators and how you can do a sky change when you travel from one part of the toy box to another and back again. If so, please give this video a like and leave a comment to let me know. Next time, we will hook up the logic for the main quest, which loosely follows the movie's storyline. Until then, thank you for watching and take care.